The following program was made possible by funding from the UCF Office of Research and Commercialization.
President Hitt serves on the American College and University President's Climate Commitment Leadership Circle, an organization that's committed to reducing campus emissions of greenhouse gases. Thanks to President Hitt's leadership, UCF is a regional, state, and national leader in sustainability. For example, UCF is administering a $10 million state program to install solar energy systems to 90 public schools. The solar systems will offset electricity costs and reduce greenhouse effects. Recently published UCF research shows how one day soon cars can be powered by ethanol from waste products such as orange peels and newspapers. That whole Doc Brown Back to the Future thing. Just shove it in the top, it'll work. And in February, UCF unveiled its innovative campus-wide climate action plan that outlines how the university will meet President Hitt's goal to make UCF climate neutral by 2050. President Hitt is a visionary leader and someone I am fortunate to have served on the selection committee to pick back in 1992 and to still call a friend today. Please help me welcome University of Central Florida President John Hitt.
Well, thank you, Tico, and thanks all of you for being here today. I couldn't help think about all of the initiatives that have been undertaken at UCF, and the clean energy projects are really near and dear to my heart. But I have to say, you know, we've been able, just by doing common sense adaptations, recommissioning buildings and so forth, we've cut energy use in our buildings by about 28% over the last 3 years. So clean energy is the future, but there's a lot we can do today to curtail wasted energy in our systems. It's great to be a part of this summit, and I thank all of you for your leadership in establishing energy policy for our state. Commissioner Bronson and President Herodopoulos, great to see you here today, and so many others. We know that you understand the importance of educating our citizens about clean energy and its role in Florida's economic growth. A big thanks to Citizens for Clean Energy for hosting this important event. In light of the increasing severity of the Gulf oil disaster, the conversations and ideas that will be shared today are even more important than many of us would have anticipated when this summit was first planned. Facing the unprecedented environmental and economic difficulties in our immediate and long-term future is critically important to the well-being of our state, our nation, and indeed the entire world. In Florida, we must invest in renewable energy for many reasons. Let me just mention 3 categories of reasons. First, because energy costs will rise faster if we don't invest in renewable energy. Florida exports about $30 billion a year in capital to other states and countries to pay for fuels. And by 2020, the average retail cost of residential electricity is projected to be about 21 cents per kilowatt hour. That's about 58% higher than today. Second broad category, because energy security and economic sustainability are imperatives for Florida, and because Floridians need jobs. More than 75% of renewable energy jobs are in the manufacturing and construction industries. The exact skill sets of many of our citizens who are unemployed, they're in the construction trades. So it offers great promise for employment. A strong renewable energy market can result in up to 2.3 new business firms and 25 direct jobs in green manufacturing and construction for every megawatt of energy produced. Third broad category, because Floridians and Florida's visitors treasure our environment. A renewable energy market will significantly reduce Florida's greenhouse gas footprint, improve its air and water quality, and delay future costs of environmental abatement. These are just a few of the reasons that we must put our heads and our hands together. The panel members who've been assembled today will provide thoughtful research analysis, significant ideas, and innovative strategies that we can use to improve Florida's position and set the course for a brighter future. UCF Solar Energy Center has prepared a short video to help us understand how our current energy crisis can lead to clean energy opportunities for Florida.
Florida's future security and economic stability requires energy independence. Florida is facing challenging times with the housing market in disarray, unemployment at an all-time high, and oil washing up on our shores. Our environment and economy is in shambles. To make matters worse, electricity costs are projected to be 58% higher in 2020. Today, 73% of Florida's electricity is produced from imported fossil fuels. That's $30 billion being exported to other states and countries. Clearly, Florida is energy dependent. What can Florida do? Pass a renewable energy policy. Our utilities will use Florida-manufactured solar panels and Florida-grown biomass. Our citizens will make their homes more efficient and put solar on their roofs. Our children will be more energy efficient and use more renewable energy. Florida is bright for homegrown energy, but renewable energy manufacturers will call Florida home only if we act now. Our strong research community, high-tech labor force, vibrant solar industry, and renewable energy-committed utilities are ideal for the manufacturing of clean technologies. And as a primary shipping gateway, Florida has the opportunity to capitalize on international exports. An investment in a renewable energy policy will provide long-term economic sustainability, jobs for future generations, and lead the Sunshine State to energy security and independence. Let's not miss an opportunity to create a bright future for Florida.
Since Mr. Weiser just joined us on the panel, I'm going to ask him the first question. Robert, straight and simple. Now, if you've ever worked with the Tax Watch guys before, you give them a microphone, you have to be very careful because it will go on for a while. So we'll start clapping if we need him to stop his answer. But Robert, how will renewable energy become the cornerstone or economic growth engine of a sustainable economy?
Well, renewable energy is first off key to Florida's growth and to our growth as a sustainable economy domestically. And the opportunity right now for growth in renewable energy, and specifically one thing that Florida Tax Watch has looked at in solar energy, is enormous and expanding. The global market for these kinds of technologies is not only has a great possibility for growth, but has grown significantly in the last few years in basically every way when you can imagine it, in capacity, in production, in capital investment. And the United States is not a leader in this industry. We're behind Spain and Germany and a few other places. So the United States really has some way to catch up in our production capacity and in the investments that we can make in this and the economic benefits that would generate. And Florida is not even a leader within the United States. We're not even in the top 10 in solar energy production, and we're behind such states that you wouldn't normally think of as Oregon, Massachusetts, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, all ahead of us. So Florida really has an opportunity to grow in this area, and is a growing area globally. It's an opportunity for Florida to lead. Both we have natural competitive advantages here, and we have an opportunity now to pursue this, and the economic benefit that would be generated by this kind of investment could be potentially very significant. Dr. Villamil and the Washington Economics Group did a study showing as many as 40,000 jobs that could be created by this kind of investment. Even if half that number, 20,000 jobs or more, this economy is absolutely a vital thing. So it really would be a cornerstone of the growth, not only for our state, but for the nation.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Well, if it is going to serve as a cornerstone, I guess the question, and I'll address this one to Eric Szilagyi. What are the necessary energy policies that have to be in place to incentivize utilities to start building large-scale renewable energy projects?
Well, I think we have a roadmap for that, actually. You know, in 2008, the legislature actually passed renewable language that allowed for large-scale projects to be built in the state up to a cap of 110 megawatts. And that has resulted in 2 projects that are now in operation, the nation's largest solar photovoltaic facility, and also one at NASA, which is in operation, and the third, which will be done at the end of this year, which I'm very proud to say, and you know, we're going to now be, Florida will, at the end of this year, be in a leadership position in this country by being the 2nd largest producer of solar energy in the nation. That won't last very long. States like New Jersey, Colorado, and others are in the midst of attracting other industries to build new renewable energy there. But what we need is similar type of renewable energy policy that provides stability and predictability. So companies such as Florida Power and Light and other utilities, there are 55 in the state of Florida, that have the opportunity to go out and build large-scale renewable energy facilities. And scale is important because that's what drives prices down. And the prices are coming down significantly, and with the right kind of policy in place, that's a multi-year policy. That won't be a one-off type like we saw in 2008, something that can be predicted. Other companies will move here, and they will bring their manufacturing facilities here in Florida, and that's what will create the jobs, not just the building of the projects, but the actual manufacturing facilities, the research and development. And if there's a policy in place that you can plan on over the course of several years, 3, 4, 5 years, then people will invest long-term in Florida.
Great. Thank you, Eric. Let me address the next question to Ms. Kilmer. As you look at the state of Florida and our desire, frankly, to not only develop clean energy policy and production, but perhaps export some of that, how do you foresee Florida positioning itself in the market as an exporter of renewable energy technologies and R&D?
Well, first and foremost, Florida has got to set an example for other states and nations by becoming a user of alternative energies and renewable energies in and of itself. We must establish a market here in Florida first before we can export it. We need to become experts in the use, the manufacturing, and the research and development and education in this field. All those states and nations, as you mentioned, that have already are proceeding in these industries are making these leaps, and they're doing so because they have provided economic incentives for these industries, so that they actually are recognizing the long-term benefits for the short-term incentives that they're offering to entrepreneurs to get involved in these businesses. If Florida focuses on these industries, and there's a lot of industries involved in renewable industry. It's amazing what I have learned. As you heard from my background, I'm not really an energy expert, but it's pretty phenomenal, all the industries that are out there just really bubbling up, ready to just explode with all kinds of economic opportunities. It's really endless, and there's an opportunity for Florida known as, in my opinion, it's a sunshine state. It's a natural for it to be the leader in solar industries as well as others. And hopefully, once we meet our state's needs, then you'll have the manufacturing plants, you will have workforce development established, the education base will be here, and then we can export it to other states and nations.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. Let me go to Dr. Swallow. Dr. Swallow, let's assume this all works, and we actually achieve a proliferation of renewable energy in the state of Florida. As an expert in commercialization of such technologies, share with us for a minute how that will create or diversify our economy that's traditionally been tourism-based or agriculturally based, and maybe even more importantly, with the current Gulf crisis and the highest unemployment rate in our history and the looming loss of additional jobs, is it more critical now than ever to move forward on a renewable clean energy policy, and what kind of economic impact would that have?
I would say it is more critical now for the reasons that have been mentioned, but for another very fundamental reason. It has been pointed out that the U.S. is not leading anymore in, for example, in photovoltaics, solar energy generation. If you look at the worldwide demand for photovoltaics and growth, it's increasing exponentially. The U.S. market share is dropping. That's a threat to the economic security of our nation. Timeliness is very important here. So there's an urgency. The good news is that within the next 5 years, with hard work, we expect that photovoltaics will reach what's called grid parity, where the electrons from the sun will cost the same as electrons from natural gas. It's important that we set the stage here in Florida so that we're in on the start of this revolutionary industry, which is projected to produce over 3 million jobs nationwide in the next 10 years. And as the fourth largest consumer of energy, I think we have an obligation to make sure that we have those shares of jobs here in our state. We saw in the video and heard from Dr. Hitt that Florida sends out of state $30 billion a year to buy fuel for generation of electricity. $30 billion a year we ship out the border, removes it from our economy. If instead of buying that fuel, we spend some money on the manufacturing of photovoltaics as one example of sustainable energy, so we spend our utility money, our electric bill, instead of buying fuel, we get the fuel free. Electricity is not going to be free. And what we pay for instead is the manufacturing jobs that are put in place to manufacture those solar panels and the installation jobs for the installation of those solar panels. About half of the projected jobs in photovoltaics is meant to be from the technology sector. In fact, most people are now saying that the next big high-tech explosion worldwide is going to be in photovoltaics. So about half those jobs are high-tech jobs, and about half those jobs are trades jobs for the installation, maintenance, and monitoring of these power plants made from semiconductors. So I guess what I would say in summary, we've heard Dr. Villamil's projection of 40,000 jobs. I think if we penetrate the Florida market with about 10% of renewables, that will produce about 20,000 jobs. 20% renewables, about 40,000 jobs. So about 2,000 jobs per percent of our energy generation we should look forward to coming from renewable energy. And deference to other areas of renewable energy, be it wind or be it biomass, I think you can make similar arguments, but for sure in the photovoltaic area, to have a policy in place that encourages the production and manufacturing of solar cells in our state will result in a huge increase in jobs at this very critical time.
Well, let's stay along those lines, and you are welcome to clap for Dr. Swallow. Let's stay along those lines, and I want to go to Miguel Fuentes, as I said in his introduction, the political director for the Florida Carpenters Regional Council. Dr. Swallow is talking about types of jobs to be created. Mr. Fuentes, your involvement in Workforce Florida as well as with the Carpenters Council, how do you see it? What sort of jobs do you see coming out of a clean energy economy, assuming we can get a proliferation of clean energy businesses?
Well, I have to say, first, I believe in not ever wasting a good recession because it's the mother of invention, necessity, and right now there's a great need, and we have the ability to fill that need in various ways. Not only at the entry level with folks coming in to do the manufacturing, the installation, and the maintenance, but you also have the R&D. So you can really grow a whole economy around this new technology. I mean, the economy as we know it, it's not, or we knew it, will not come back. It will not be the same. It'll be different. Now is the time for us to take advantage of these crises and make opportunity. If you look across the state of Florida, you have dozens of trade partners who are there doing apprenticeship programs. We have a highly skilled, well-trained workforce who is currently unemployed. They have the dexterity, the aptitude, and the desire to go to work. All we really need to do is understand the technology as it is, retool all these shops, develop the curriculum, and in a short period of time, you can prepare folks to take advantage of those jobs in the future. And we're talking about thousands of jobs, long-term jobs with upward mobility. Remember, you come in at an entry level, but if you develop some interest and want to know more about it and be part of the R&D, we have the institutions here, like Central Florida College here, that can help people get to that next level. We're talking about long-term economic impact, particularly for folks who are right now graduating from college and, quite frankly, going back home to their parents. I love my children, but I don't want them around that long. I want them to be able to live the American dream and find an area where not only they can contribute back to their community, but feel like they're part of the future, the innovation that made us great. We can't do that here in Florida. We can do that with photovoltaic, with the wind, with all the other technologies that are out there right now. And we can be an exporter. That means transportation jobs. That we have all the major ports here. We can be an exporter rather than an importer, and we are the gateway to South America and the Caribbean, a place that has been using this type of technology for decades. Why not make it here, perfect it here, and send her out, and get our folks to maintain them and develop the industry of the future? That's what we need to be doing, and we're ready to go.
Great. Thanks, Miguel. Now, as we talk about 40,000 possible jobs in this area, there's also development of additional industries that may come about as a result of these clean energy technologies. And I want to ask you, Ms. Englander, based on Sematech's experiences in other states, particularly Texas, what kind of additional industries grow out or create themselves as a result of clean energy technology and renewable energies, and what can we expect in Florida?
I'm actually speaking as a representative more of the semiconductor industry, which is chip makers, Intel, IBM, AMD, Global Foundries, and others. Our consortium was created back in 1987 as a collaboration between the U.S. government and the semiconductor industry, who faced dual challenges. One was the U.S. industry in semiconductors had lost market share rapidly to Japan. It had lost leadership. It wanted to regain it. And secondly, the U.S. government, seeing that threat, realized the potential impact to national security if all chips were made on foreign soil. So the consortium came together. It was a collaboration of chip makers, but it broadened across the entire supply chain. And I think that's one of the lessons we bring, right, to renewable energies. It is a way, a consortium is a way of bringing together collaborators to create roadmaps, to create standards, to work together on technology and manufacturing, and essentially promulgate the success of the entire industry together. So we see in Sematech, we worked with the entire supply chain, from chip makers to their suppliers, both materials and equipment, universities, national labs on the research side, kind of developing that pipeline so that you could pull a good research idea into a Sematech, which looked at how to develop that, how to make it manufacturable, how to make it affordable, work with the suppliers, and then send it on to our member companies who are the manufacturers. So we were working on a whole supply chain, research to development to manufacturing. What we see, I think, and I'd like to talk just a bit about solar and PV, partly because that's more akin to the semiconductor technology that I come from. There, I think, as we've mentioned, there's an incredible opportunity, particularly over the next 5 years as we do reach grid parity, to work the entire supply chain together, to collaborate, to enrich that research, development, manufacturing pipeline. And even in solar alone, I think, in fact, I'd like to read a laundry list of the kinds of industries, or at least sub-industries, that could be developed with a powerful PV effort in Florida. There are solar cells and manufacturers, solar module manufacturers, solar equipment manufacturers, solar materials suppliers, solar systems components, inverters, electronics, monitoring systems, solar system design and installation companies, solar service companies, solar semiconductor products, near and dear to my heart, solar energy storage facilities, expanded trades, as we've mentioned, right? And not to mention the entire sort of university, laboratory, research, test facility infrastructure that supports that, as well as workforce development and education. All of those things, right, come from a successful, in this case solar, but renewable energy in general. That's a lot of jobs, that's a lot of capability, and it's achieved by working together.
Thank you, Ms. Englander. Well, if we see that it certainly makes sense industry development-wide, job development-wide, the question then becomes, and this question is to you, Ms. Kilmer, based upon your business experience, market experience, and general knowledge of what it takes to get something done, what will it take? In your estimation as a business person, what will it take to create a Florida-based renewable energy market?
Well, my specific experience related to energy has also been in the solar research, and that's where my focus has been, but it really is applicable across the board. But I'm sure most of you have seen the movie Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. Well, unfortunately, that's not the modus operandi of entrepreneurs in business. We typically want to know that there's going to be a market created, that if we build a manufacturing plant, if we spend $100 million to build a manufacturing plant and to do workforce training and to set up a distribution system, that there is going to be a buyer of those products. And this is where it's absolutely critical that we really have the legislative assistance to help create this market for us, a short-term market. We've actually looked at the numbers, and if we could create a market of approximately 700 megawatts of energy over the next 3 years, of solar energy over the next 3 years, that would be enough incentive to have entrepreneurs, us included, come to Florida to build a manufacturing plant, to set up the workforce development, to do all of those things, that once we meet Florida's needs, then we've created a market here. Those manufacturing plants are still here. The manufacturing plants will spur research and development. It will create educational opportunities, all the types of jobs that Ms. Highlander just indicated. And so at that point, then we can pursue the market and penetrate the market into other states and other nations, and it can be an industry that is here for decades to come, my children, my grandchildren, so that we have established not only something that creates jobs, the economic opportunities that are given with this, but also it's a great opportunity for our legislators to be the catalyst that will actually create a partnership between the environmental activists and entrepreneurs and businesses that can create something that's good for the economy, that's good for the environment, and it's good for our health. So hopefully, we can get this project moving forward, get energy moving forward here in Florida, and that we can actually become one of the states that will be world-renowned for our initiatives here today.
Great. Thanks, Ms. Coming Up. Let's just be clear. It certainly seems as if you do the reading and you listen to the speakers and you talk to the groups at some level, everybody agrees that a clean energy, a renewable energy policy would have economic benefits to the state of Florida. Yet, before I finish the question, let me tell you who it's coming to so you can be prepared for it. This will be for Mr. Weiss. Yet, even though it seems to make sense, we have lacked political will in the past to achieve this result. My question to you, Mr. Weiss, is what's it going to take? What's it going to take to get this done?
Thanks.
It's a softball for you.
Yeah. Maybe I should say change the politicians, but I don't think that would go over with very many people here. But I don't think that's actually necessary because I think, as Senator Haradopoulos said, I think that there are a lot of legislators that are very interested in promoting renewable energy in the state as a mechanism for economic development and for energy independence. Basically, what it's going to take is to create a market for the purchase of renewable power. And as Eric said, in order to finance these projects, what Andrea was saying, you need stability in the market and the regulatory market, because banks want stability and predictability before they'll finance anything. And whether that regulatory regime comes about through some sort of utility set-aside, some sort of solar set-aside, a renewable portfolio standard in the state, or some combination of those, I'm not in a position to say what's the right method right now for the state. But I will say that all the other states that Eric mentioned and that others have mentioned that have a more robust renewable energy market are ones where there have been regulatory changes.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Now that everybody's had one crack, Senator Herodopoulos has a question for y'all.
Sure. I think a lot of us are focused, and I think we all agree with the result. It's how we get there. And I think to the question that was just asked to Mr. Weiss, where we're struggling at this point is still the cost. A lot of people think that you can build something for nothing. It's just not possible. And with the new governor coming in next year, I think we'll have a fresh opportunity with looking at new ideas. But what we have done in the legislature, and maybe you can, especially I know Andrea talked about it, other states. For example, I believe Mr. Steve Precourt's here, one of our members of the House who championed the film bill. Chris Smith helped out, and Senator Lynn, for that matter, helped out with the film bill. And what we saw is that in all places, Michigan, New York City, not exactly known for cutting red tape, LA, not Los Angeles, but Louisiana, was actually doing a nice job there too. And so we looked at their model and replicated it in Florida, realizing if we had a competitive process, they want to come here as opposed to Michigan in the middle of February. So if I can ask maybe the panelists as they choose to jump in, we know that there's no such thing as something for nothing. If you build a nuclear plant, for example, it's costing $15 to $20 billion. And I believe, as one of the panelists said, when you have a regulatory environment that is, let's just say, not consistent, it's hard to make those investments. And so maybe if I can ask the panelists, whoever would like to move in, what are the incentives that have worked successfully in other states? Maybe some of the other panelists can illuminate the crowd as to what has worked, and that the ratepayer, which is the people who vote for us or not, can know with stability that this will be the cost should you go in this direction, but that cost come with these benefits, because it has to be a balanced approach. You just can't ask the consumer to pay $2 or $3 extra a month and not see the tangible benefits. So if someone can help us with that, it goes to Barry's question before, or posed him, why not the political will? Because we want to understand the cost and the benefit of this process. I think we all see the benefits, but we want to understand the balanced cost in that if we could.
Mr. Szilagyi, you're reaching for a microphone.
Well, I think probably a lot of folks. Well, I think there are a lot of folks. Look, I don't think there's any golden model. There are different models that work in different jurisdictions. Different states have had different varying success. My experience in Texas, as an example, they had a very fledgling wind industry. That they had started some wind farms 20 years ago and never really went anywhere. The legislature adopted a policy that they would require utilities to, and it's a deregulated market there, so it's a little different market, but they would require effectively kind of an RPS, or basically you have to buy so much power off of wind. And they set a goal of number of megawatts, and it was 2,880 megawatts of wind. And they expected it would take about 7 to 8 years to build out that much wind. It took about 3 years, and it has spawned a multi-billion-dollar industry now in Texas. They went from being not even really on the map to now the nation's leader in wind generation. Look, we have a roadmap here in Florida that has worked, and it's limited the costs and its predictability for the customer, which is very important. What we see right now is that costs, particularly in solar photovoltaics, are coming down dramatically, about 26% in the last 11 months. Scale makes a difference. When you call up a CEO of a manufacturing facility and you ask them for, instead of a truckload of panels, you're asking for one of their manufacturing facilities supply for a year, it's a different price point. It's the Costco model type of approach. I'll give you an example. Florida Power and Light, when we built the two solar photovoltaic facilities, we went out to 44 companies around the world. FPL does not manufacture solar panels. We don't have a construction company. What we are good at is operations and maintenance, and we have a responsibility to do that. So what we went out worldwide for bidding to get the best pricing. And that spawns that type of then competitiveness. And then companies say, how can I get that next round of business? How can I end up getting the opportunity to build here in Florida? And one of my responses is, bring a factory here. Bring a research and development facility here. You'll get a competitive edge. Obviously, the most important is price and performance. And that's what we really care about. How do you get that cost down to the customer? Predictability is important for everybody, including the customer. And the legislation that was passed 2 years ago gives exact predictability. We know exactly what it's going to cost every single month, what the cost savings are, and what the benefits are. You know, I was just doing some math, and one of the things that and so bear with me because this is chicken scratch right here, but you know, unemployment benefits, if the Washington Economics Group says it's 40,000 jobs, then that's $500 million of unemployment benefits that we're currently paying, all of us in this room as Floridians, to 40,000 Floridians who are not working. A year, every year. For an FPL customer, if my math is right, that's nearly $5 a month that an FPL customer is paying out the door for unemployment benefits. If we hire people and put them in factories or have them build, you know, the projects or have them working in research and development, you take them off unemployment benefits. And that right there is savings which far outweighs the cost of building that solar facility.
Thanks, Dr. Swallow.
I think there's another, I guess, turn of this answer is really the cost of doing nothing. There is a very substantial cost of doing nothing. And certainly a challenge that the political leadership has is to try to make the hard decisions that has a small amount of investment now that's going to have a really big payoff later. There's a critical time in the next 5 years, as I mentioned, when we're going to reach grid parity. And then it won't matter so much what policy is in place because the cost will be down and the industry will compete for it. The question is that industry going to be in Florida? Is that manufacturing going to be in Florida? And we need to have the policy in place now to set the boundary conditions, to set the conditions for these manufacturers to come in here with an assured market that that industry will be grown here instead of 5 years from now where we're trying to pay huge incentives to get California companies to come put an outpost here, which has been our traditional model. I think that we know it doesn't work very well. But the cost of doing nothing it'll actually cost more for consumers for power 10 years from now if we don't implement sustainable energy. Because as soon as the recession is over, we saw what happened before the recession, right? The cost of petroleum products was just shooting up. With the Gulf, I don't think that that's going to be any less rapid increase in cost of petroleum products. Forget about the greenhouse gases or anything else. The cost of fossil fuels is going to go up. And if we have renewables in place, 10 years from now, our electricity bills will be less. We've got a nice little 2-minute video that we could have shown today called The Cost of Doing Nothing. And that's a very important cost to consider, thought to consider. But the difficulty, and it's difficulty that you have and your colleagues have, is to try to first put the policy in place and then to convince us all that for the first 2 years, we're going to pay $50 a year more for power to help establish that industry here, because it's not a grid parity yet. So the utility companies have to be able to recover that cost. So we have to allow it in our electric bills. But I would maintain that that little bit is minor compared to fuel cost adjustments that go in everybody's bill every month. That fluctuation is much, much larger than that. So I think there's a real cost of doing nothing that we should also factor into the equation.
Eric, did you have a follow-up?
I agree. I just want to make sure, because the number that was thrown out is big. You know, from a cost perspective, our calculations, at least for FPL right now, is that every 100 megawatts of solar photovoltaic is the average cost to our customers is 7 cents a month over the life of the project. So, you know, that is, for the cost of a postage stamp, you can do, you know, per month, hundreds of megawatts. Now, the first year cost is absolutely more expensive, but you're still talking in the cents. You're not even talking in the dollars.
Mr. Fuentes, you had a follow-up.
From the planning and zoning perspective, construction, getting projects out of the ground, we seriously have to look at how to streamline that process. So we're getting shovels in the ground and projects going quickly to incentivize those manufacturers to come here so they know they don't have all these hurdles and hoops to go through. They'd love to be able to come here if they know that they're going to get their project off the ground quickly, because it costs a lot of money the longer you delay a project as the prices of materials change and the cost of delays. It could be staggering and almost a disincentive for folks to try to take the risk. So you want to do that.
Let me just go ahead and ask the question that we're all asking, and I'm going to direct it so you get ready to answer it, but others can join in, to Ms. Englander and Dr. Swallow. This all sounds great. It sounds extraordinary. Is it plausible? Is it plausible to get a plan in place, considering all the different interests that are out there in the state of Florida, from research and development to private industry, the environmental community, the labor community, the government in the government and all of its hurdles? Is this a plausible goal to create a sustainable energy policy in the short term that can benefit Florida, or are the politics just too hard? Ms. Englander, what's your experience?
I'll take a shot, and then MJ, of course, will wax eloquent on top of that. Absolutely. And I think what's needed, again, I'm harking back to the semiconductor industry and parallels. That's what I'm familiar with. But you need a catalyst. You need a game changer to bring those diverse elements together. Now, there's a negative crisis, obviously, currently. We see what's happening in the Gulf. We see that we are losing potentially leadership in an important new area of technology. There's also a very positive opportunity here, right, to pull together. And I want to tell a little bit more of the Semitech story as an example. So I mentioned that Japan had taken over market dominance in the semiconductor industry. Semitech was clearly a factor in turning that around, not the only one, obviously. But by the mid-90s, again, 7 years after Semitech's formation, market share had returned to the U.S. It had taken a substantial leadership position again. That can be done, and that can be done cooperatively. It was a new model, a consortial model. It pulled together the entire supply chain under the threat, right, of economic problems and national security. There's a similar crisis mode, I think, today. We have an opportunity to fix, right, not only assure competitiveness economically, but also work for the greater good. How better could that be, right, in terms of environmental protection and energy independence?
MJ, can we get past the hurdles?
Yeah, I would. The answer is yes, and then won't be elegant, but I'll wax a bit. I don't see that these are different interests. And in fact, if the research community, private industry, environmental community, labor, and government can't get behind the central idea of sustainable energy independence for our state, then we're indeed in pretty bad shape. I mean, what's there not to get behind? Take research. I mean, we have the Florida Solar Energy Center at UCF, the largest university-based research institute in the nation devoted to sustainable energy. So it's going to be a boon for us, all right? So we're for it, all right? We've heard the question of industry. I don't think that we know who will be the dominant companies in this country and in the world 5-10 years from now in photovoltaic manufacturing. I don't think those companies are probably in business right now. It's a wonderful opportunity. It's a whole new industry about to spawn here, that is spawning, and which is a great opportunity for entrepreneurs to step in with new ideas, new companies, et cetera. So I think it will be a boom for industry. Environmental community, as opposed to my friend that's on my right, I'm a tree-hugging left-wing radical. And, you know, what is it not to love? What is it?
I just want to clarify, he's probably talking about me and not the senator, but that's okay.
Well, everybody's to my right, but that's okay. But what is it not to like? I would invite everybody to have a look at the Florida Power and Light facility at Kennedy Space Center. It makes my skin tingle just to look at that thing. There's not, the only moving part there is a security camera that moves around to look at it. It just sits there peacefully. There are no railroad tracks there to bring in the coal. There are no smokestacks to disperse the pollutants. And there are no cooling towers to deal with all the water. It just sits there and takes sunshine and makes energy. What is there not to like from an environmental standpoint for sustainable energy? I think it has to be there. And we've heard from labor already. There are jobs and jobs and jobs. And I think we can all be cynical about government. And believe me, I'm as cynical as the next fellow. But when you get to meet individuals like Mr. Herdopoulos or people from the other party individually, nobody goes there without thinking there, meaning to the legislature, the Congress, without going there to think they want to do something good for the community, for the nation. And I think this is a cause that no matter which side of the aisle you're on, you should be able to get behind. I think people will get behind it.
I knew I was going to hear a lot of comments today, but I didn't think we'd get a chill up the leg today, but I guess we did so.
Hey, Tigo, can I follow up too on one thing on the Semitech? I lived in Austin, and I was there in the early 80s and mid 80s, and I cannot tell you how transformational the whole industry was in Semitech for Austin. And anybody who's been to that city in the last couple of years has seen the billions and billions and billions of dollars that have been invested in that area and how transformational it has been, not just for the city, not just for the region, but for that entire state. And yes, we can absolutely do this. We've started it. And that's the one thing that I want to make sure we don't lose sight of. We are already on our way. We just need to keep going. We have 110 megawatts in this year that will be in operation, which is a lot to be proud of. It's a good start. When the legislation passed in 2008, the first project was in construction within 6 months. And people were at work within 6 months.
Senator?
I think very good points have been made, and maybe I've heard it consistently through most of the speakers, and they talk about the idea of grid parity in 5 years. And I don't want to get into the subprime idea, but creative financing, what barriers are to creative financing where a person might say, as the doctor has brought up, there's some upfront costs. Of course, that number is negotiable or debatable. But if we know in 5 years there's going to be grid parity, are there some creative financing that we can do or tax changes that we could make so that the customer doesn't have such a big upfront cost as we make this investment, knowing that over time the investment will be, of course, rewarded?
Mr. Weiss.
I mean, one of the ways of doing that, and the legislature did pass a bill enabling PACE municipal districts last year. And that's clearly a way of dispersing the cost and allowing those that want to produce renewable energy for their homes to do it in a low-cost, effective manner without affecting utility rates generally. So, encourage those use. I know there's been some issue with that on Fannie and Freddie Mac in terms of the priority of the lien of the municipal district on the House, but I'm expecting that Obama is going to solve that issue. He's not going to let Fannie and Freddie derail the use of these innovative financing districts.
I think, again, one of the key areas on keeping the cost down is going to be having a large enough market here where we can attract the manufacturing here and have scale. I mean, we all know the benefits of scale. When you go to Sam's or Costco, you get that benefit. It's the same thing. Or you go in and anything that you buy in a larger volume, you can drive the price down. We have an opportunity to do that. And again, the bill that did pass in the House last year called for 700 megawatts over the life of the projects. That's 50 cents to the average customer, at least at FPL, a month. And so now I'm not belittling 50 cents. Those prices will continue to come down. The three projects that we have right now will save 1 million barrels of oil and 51 billion cubic feet of natural gas that, but for those solar projects, we would have to burn to produce electricity to provide for the customers.
Just as a final question, we've heard a lot of conversation about the importance and the need and the desire and the politics and the timing. MJ talked about in 5 years we may be at grid parity. The time is now. I want to ask Mr. Weissert, more appropriately, why is it critical, if we're going to do this now? And why is it critical to position Florida as a national leader now, as opposed to once grid parity happens and maybe the investments aren't so great?
Well, there's a number of explanations to that, but of course, first off, is we need to start the investment now to be in a position to take advantage of it when grid parity does come. Also, that's not a bright line. Obviously, as we go on from today forward, the projections show that the cost of production will decrease, and simultaneously, the amount of capital investment in this kind of industry will increase. So, to Senator Herodopoulos' point, Mr. Szilagyi and the people from business are better to explain how they can get the financing to move forward with these projects. But from the economic perspective, Florida Tax Watch can certainly say, all of our evidence from the Florida Council of Economic Advisors and others show that, Florida, this recession is going to be longer, deeper. We're going to be one of the last states out of it. And our projections here that we've done on this analysis for solar energy show that there's significant capital investment out there, and there will be over the next 5 years. It's increased significantly, and it will continue to increase.
We will now turn to your questions. The first question, and we picked this one first because, frankly, it's keenly interesting to me. How can, and I'll throw it out for the group, how can solar thermal energy use be encouraged for commercial and residential use? How can we make that work?
Well, there's actually already significant, I mentioned at the beginning that Florida doesn't lead the nation in our mass solar generation from PVs, but we're pretty high up with California and Hawaii on more passive solar, off-the-grid solar, kind of heating pools, water heating, that kind of stuff, things that people put on their roof, but off-grid, stuff that doesn't actually produce energy that goes back into the grid. So that just speaks to the potential for this industry in Florida, that people are already using it, and now, it's just a hop, skip, and a jump from passive to active, which is really where the growth is going to be. And again, there's charts that show that off-grid is not really increasing significantly, and on-grid is increasing very significantly, especially internationally, and the domestic gap between those two is not as much, and it will be, because we will be following what the rest of the world is doing. So Florida can lead, can get out ahead of the active the way that we have been in the passive, then we really can take advantage of that.
And Tigo, I'm assuming when you say solar thermal, it's really solar hot water is what folks are talking about. And Robert said there are incentives in place. One of the challenges that Floridians have that a lot of other folks around the nation don't have when it comes down to retrofitting your existing home with the technology is mounting anything on your roof because of our hurricanes. And the costs associated with that, and the difficulties in getting things permitted, can just add cost to it. Doesn't mean it doesn't work. It just means we have to recognize that. We have to recognize it in our permitting and homeowners associations, things of that nature. And frankly, working with companies on improving technology so it's easier to install, less expensive to install, and doesn't create any problems, particularly when you're retrofitting a house and you're putting on your roof. It can be difficult, expensive. It can create problems on insurance. And so those are just challenges that we face here in Florida that many homeowners in different parts of the country don't, simply because of the wind loadings that we have to build for, particularly for coastal residents.
Thank you. Next question. This one's also very interesting. Please discuss the nexus of clean energy and smart meter, smart grid, real-time electricity prices, and in-home energy management systems. Eric, I think that's probably in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, the developments of technologies, particularly around the smart grids and smart meters, is very exciting. We're in the midst of deploying smart meters to all of the 4.5 million FPL customers statewide that we have. And what it really does is it empowers all the customers to have information and to understand where consumption is taking place within the home, which appliances are consuming more or less than others, and therefore able to make better decisions as to how to manage one's own energy consumption. So smart meters and smart grids are really a very important opportunity for all of us to be able to be empowered and then therefore make better decisions as part of a holistic approach on how do we generate, utilize energy. And that information is going to be provided to us. That nexus is already occurring. We see it now where We have appliances now that we're working with manufacturers such as GE, where the refrigerator actually talks to the meter, and then the meter can actually talk directly back to us and say, you know, we have a problem with this appliance. It's using too much electricity, or gee, power prices or power usage either way are going up because it's middle of a day and there's, you know, super hot temperatures out there. Can I cycle this appliance down for 20 minutes and save electricity that way? The best and the cleanest form of energy is that we don't use. Energy conservation. And the smart grid and the smart meters give us an opportunity to be much more efficient on how we can wisely use what we have to produce and how we can not use as much going forward.
Great.
I just want to mention one thing about
Mr. Weiss.
use of smart meters. It needs to really be coupled with time of day pricing, though, to get the most value of smart meters. And that is, if you want to do your laundry in the middle of the night, you're going to pay less if you want to do it in the middle of the day. So to really be effective as a tool for consumption and the regulation of consumption, we need time of day pricing.
Yeah, I think smart meters would lead to some good peak management technology, which would be helpful. Another question. Is there a plan, by the way, English is my second language, but if you could write a little more clearly on these questions, it would be really good. Is there a plan or method in place to easily and effectively connect the ideas, designs that we're talking about here with existing R&D companies and existing manufacturers, not just bringing new businesses in, but growing the businesses that we have here locally? Actually, Ms. Englander, did you all deal with a great deal of that as you created industry spinoffs and new companies and the like in Texas?
Certainly, the Austin, I'm speaking in Texas at the moment, but we also, I think, have a New York story as well, since we have operations there. There was local growth. There were companies that, and I wish I had ratios, but the semiconductor industry, particularly in the supplier and sub-supplier areas, a lot of homegrown companies, entrepreneurial opportunities, startups. I'm thinking of one we have currently in our facility. It's nanomedical devices that is a nano-bio product that essentially delivers life-saving drugs inside the body, right, using semiconductor technology. Those kinds of things are absolutely homegrown, and that's a very powerful, I think, component of job creation.
There are absolutely industries already here in Florida, and we're using a lot of them in the manufacturing of the solar facilities right now, or the building of the solar facilities. There's an aluminum manufacturing facility in St. Augustine, which makes the frames that we purchase. There's mirror manufacturers, High Power, which is a Florida company, has been involved in the solar facilities as an example, on the construction. So there are a number of existing companies here in Florida that will have an opportunity to really leverage off of this, expand their businesses, and frankly, I hope, have the opportunity to then export that technology, those goods, and that expertise to other states, not just Southeast U.S., but across the nation and overseas. And that's where you really get the benefit.
This program was made possible by funding from the UCF Office of Research and Commercialization.